Hey flower friends, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden podcast. It is your host and friend Lisa Mason Ziegler, and thanks a lot for dropping in. I appreciate it, and I love what I'm talking about today. You know, I don't know if y'all have noticed that I've been barking up this tree of fear and just all that it does to us, because I have now, I guess just in the last 5 years, really come to understand it's at the root of everything that holds us back from not just business, from doing anything that you want to do. You know, maybe you want to like jump out of a plane, skydive, but you're too afraid, you know? I mean, it applies to all parts of life, right? So before we jump into today's episode, which is really about missing the start because we are afraid, right? Just want to remind everybody, and especially if you're new here, and if you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. We have a plentiful platform over at thegardenersworkshop.com, where, friends, everything we do because of you. We want to empower people to grow beautiful cut flowers, whether it is for profit or for pleasure. We have what you need. We equip you, we educate you, and we even entertain a little bit. You will find our fully stocked online garden shop. We have a library of online courses. You can learn about my private flower farmer club over there, the live gardening show that happens several times a week. We have free blogs, our sister podcast, Seed Talk. You know, there's just a lot going on over there. So you're invited always, anytime, 24/7, thegardenersworkshop.com. So my friends, we've been missing the mark of starting our flower farming businesses. We miss it because we just don't ever start it, right? And that seems pretty simple, but why don't we start? And it's because we're afraid of all of those evil 2 words, what if, that we're so busy running around stacking them up, whether it's in your mind. I tend to stack things on my shoulders that weight me down, but we are scaring ourselves to death. That type of thinking takes you down a rabbit hole that I have learned has absolutely no benefit. It doesn't, in fact, really protect you from anything, you know? And so I have shared many times before that I'm a dyslexic, and this may seem a little crazy to you, but my dyslexia is, in fact, what led me to becoming a successful flower farming entrepreneur. You know, it may appear to you guys that I'm not fearful, but in fact, I'm really scared pretty much on a regular basis, daily, if the truth was really told. It is my dyslexic characteristics of impulsiveness that have helped me to take the plunge, to start and to stay in business. And this God-given ability through dyslexia of me being this cliff jumper, it may seem reckless to some of you. Those would be the normal people. But in fact, my lifelong struggle with the problems that dyslexics actually face, they prepared me. Literally, my whole life has been preparation for the opportunities that are awaiting me, you know, and I was forced, or I should say, dyslexics are forced to be problem solvers because we face a whole lot of problems, y'all. You know, we typically can't spell, can't read very well, have no understanding of grammar, or at least these are the things that were the problems that, you know, that I had to overcome. So I've been practicing problem solving for a really long time. And I understand now that what may seem as a handicap to some of you, God, as usual, meant for good. It's like touche, you know, the fact has been proven. So all of this led me to having the guts to pursue my dream of becoming a flower farmer. And for me to look at it as it was just another problem to solve, right? And my hope in actually not just this podcast, but everything that I do is to help the normal people that are fearful, and I'm laughing to myself over this. It's like to think that this person that was beat up all through school, and I don't mean physically, I mean verbally, and terrified about not being able to read out loud and spell and get what an adjective is. I have one up on those people. You know, I am a fearless public speaker. Why? It just does not scare me. If I'm speaking about what I'm passionate about. So there's just a little inside humor to dyslexics over all of this, right? So that's my hope, that I'm going to take you normal people and let you see that I've done it, and that means that you, by George, can do it too. And just a side note, I did it really scared, by the way. Just because I had the guts to start doesn't mean that I was not afraid. So honestly, you know, if I can, you can. That's the motto here. Because let's just look at a few of the bare facts about me. When I started flower farming in 1998, I was barely a gardener. Literally, I was just dabbling. I live in the middle of the city on two city lots for my neighborhood, and I'm totally surrounded in houses. I mean, who in their wildest dreams would think you could start a flower farmer here? Yours truly, the dyslexic, thinks it's possible. What else were my challenges? I had no tractor. I had no greenhouse. And not only did I not have a greenhouse, the city won't allow me to have a greenhouse. So that's off the table. And I didn't have acreage. You know, I had some real stuff to overcome, right? So if there was anybody that you could think of in your circle that should not become a flower farmer, it would be yours truly. So friends, I am talking to you as a firsthand experienced person. If I can do it, you can do it. It all comes down to just getting the guts to start it, and everybody can get the guts. I want all you normal people, you non-dyslexics, I don't want anybody to be offended by that, but it's like there's just so much humor in this, to know that getting courage starts with fear. And I think that's the part that I just never got. I just passed it over, you know, I just stepped past the fear. But now I know the fear and overcoming it is where it all starts. That's what leads to having the courage and the guts to do it. So once you start, it just gets easier to take the next step and the next step and so forth. You know, the steps look and feel so enormous. And I want to say here, you know, I used to always say, how do you eat an elephant? One little bite at a time. But that visual is just not a good thing for me anymore, right? But that's the truth. How do you face an enormous job? You take off one little piece at a time, because once you start, it starts the beginning. And once you begin, tackle one problem at a time. And frankly, what I have learned, when you're all tied up taking care of this problem, you are not fretting over possible problems in the future. Honestly, right? So how would you go about really starting this journey, right? And I think that y'all, meaning people that are starting today, face this more than I did 30 years ago when I started, and it's all because of the internet and social media. We're so overloaded. There is so much noise out there. It is hard to find your way. But here are my three. And I also want to mention that making yourself focus and becoming self-disciplined, which is a great ingredient to start practicing as a business owner, starts at the beginning. Because you know what my first step recommendation is to begin with the 30,000 foot view of the big picture of starting a business like a flower farmer or like a flower farm. So just imagine that you're on an airplane and you're looking out the window, how when you're, you know, like 4 miles away from the airport, they bring you down low enough that literally you can see houses and yards and pools and cars and gardens, and you can see stuff and know what it is, right? That's where we start with starting a business. This means you are not gonna zoom in on one of those beautiful houses that you're seeing to go down there and see what the details are at this point in the game. You are not gonna get lost on one little piece of this big picture of starting a flower farm and business. I'm going to say that again. You are not going to go deep, go down a rabbit hole on this one little piece, or on any one little piece of starting or becoming a flower farmer, however you want to look at it. There are, and it's easier today to do this than not to focus, but to get lost. There are so many great resources that are the deep dives, the rabbit holes on these little teeny niches, information pieces on where you could go as a flower farmer. But in the beginning, when you're in the startup phase, this is not the time to consume your precious time with one little piece of the big picture. You have to back out, y'all. You have to back out. You have to get the big picture drawn before you can start filling in the little tiny pieces, right? You have to focus on the basics of starting a business and what the point of the business is, right? You know, there's going to be so many balls to juggle to get the business started. You know, if you get all hot and heavy on one little piece of the 20 different pieces, and there's more than 20, but I'm just using that as an example. There's 20 different pieces required for you to know a little bit about, not deep dive, just a little bit. You'll never make it back out of that hole at this point if you go deep on one of that 20, because there's 19 others that need you to really fill in the cracks. This is the part that just overwhelms everybody. You don't want to go deep at this point in time, and I'm going to tell you just a really great example of this. You know that my previous life, I was the business manager of an amazing animal hospital, a veterinarian hospital. And back in those days, we did not have veterinarian specialties, cardiology, ophthalmology, orthopedic surgeons on the corner. Now, usually within most places, you have within an hour of where you live, for people that live in populated areas, within an hour you can get to one of those kinds of doctors. Back in the day when I was in a veterinary hospital, you had to go to one of the big veterinarian colleges, universities that were teaching veterinary students to actually get to those people. So, point being that the veterinarian had to have a vast amount of knowledge about all the systems that were running on a dog or a cat. And they had to know a little bit about each one of those to be able to help people as much as they could, because not everybody can pack up and go to a university and look at spending, you know, back then it was $2,000 to $5,000. I know today it's $5,000 to $20,000 to have a specialty doctor fix your dog's problem. So a veterinarian was a classic, and it was the same for GPs. You know, back in the day, GPs kind of took care of all of your parts, right? And that's what a flower farmer has to do, especially in the beginning. You cannot let yourself get all caught up on learning everything there is to learn about growing ranunculus at this point in time. You aren't even thinking about ranunculus at this point in time. You're thinking basics. Get the business up, get it running, make some money before you start going down those rabbit holes. So think 30,000 foot view from the airplane of getting your business started. So that's how you manage getting started. That's number one. What's number two? When you actually get going here, start small, and listen to this, y'all. And I'm sure I'll hear flack about this. Do not experiment. That is not what you're in this. You can experiment all you want as a home gardener or as an experienced flower farmer. But while you are putting money on the line, so let me just say this very quickly. To get your business started, you have to get legal. That means you have to spend money. You have to get your insurance done. You have to get your business stuff in order. The first day you spend money, the next goal you have is to start positive cash flow as quick as possible. You are not experimenting at this point in time. Now, once 5 years in or 3 years or 10 years in, wherever you go, and you're making money, experiment all you want. But right now, you are not experimenting. Start small. We know that the overall success stories of the long-term successful people all started small and went slow. They did not go from, because let me tell you what, I'm 64. I am this perfect person now that I have disposable income. We don't owe any money to anybody. So if you have money coming in, it piles quick. And that means that people can say, I'm going to be a flower farmer. I'm going to go ahead and get a tractor and greenhouses, and I'm going to do this. You don't even know what you need yet. We see it happening every stinking day, y'all. Start small and go slow. I don't care how much money you have available to you. Not everybody does. When I started, that's a whole nother story. I had $1,000 to spend, and that was it. And I made it work. So start small and go slow. And when you interview people that have been doing this for 10 to 20 years, that's the story that comes out. They really exercised either great self-control if they did have resources, or they bootstrapped like a big dog because they had no other choice, like me, right? And so experimenting isn't what a startup business does. You know, while you're learning those many different pieces, just remember baby steps. And the pain today pays off in the future. And so when I say start small, oftentimes that's the question I get. Well, what do you mean start small? You know, I think a really manageable size garden to start with. I don't care if you are the greatest gardener in the world. Gardening and farming are so different, y'all. That was the biggest eye-opener to me. You do things so very, very differently. So my recommendation is to start off with 1/8 of an acre or less. That's a great jumping off point. That's like 5,500 square feet. Or if you don't understand what size that means, which you got to get on that if you're going to become a farmer, that is a 55-foot by a 100-foot garden. That is a lot. That is a lot of garden space, y'all. It's huge. You have to learn self-control, which I struggle with all the time now because I can do so many different things. You know, business owners are not on short order with ideas. It's making them actually come to life and work. That's the struggle. So practicing self-control in starting your garden size, because let me just add in here that the growing of the flowers is 1/3 or less of a flower farming business. You have a whole lot of other, dragons to slay. All right, the other thing that, I'll try not to get up on my high horse very high about this, but that is to become a part of a support network. Y'all, there are so many social media flower farming groups, and I will say that in my experience, which does not mean that it's true for everybody, but in my experience, most of those are populated with people that want to get started in flower farming. They aren't really a place to learn more. You're learning, it's like you're doing the DIY alongside other people that are doing it, which if that's what you want to do, by golly, it's available. But serious business people, meaning somebody that says, all right, today is October, I am launching next April. I'm starting it. I'm doing it. I want to feather my family's financial nest. I want to pay off our mortgage. I want to, build my retirement, whatever. Or I need to help support the family. That's not the way to do it, in my opinion. And there are better ways to do it. Because joining with other people that have people ahead of you that can help you to learn and lead makes all the difference in the world. Connecting with other people that are serious, because anyway, I will try not to go too hard on this. Every single day, just because when I open up my feeds to go in and post into our groups, I frequently will read a post from other groups, and it is not uncommon for actually the information being given is 100% incorrect. And just, I know what that does to the morale of people. It beats you down. How many times are you going to try until you just pack up and leave, right? So, joining communities that are actually have a basis to help you learn and move forward is so significant. I just can't even tell you. You know, you're with like-minded people. There are qualified people offering advice. And even, it doesn't matter where you are in your flower farming journey, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, me, 25, 28 year, whatever it is, we are always learning. I call it continuing education to stay in, you know, current on what's available and what's going on. So becoming a part of a community, you just need to be aware of these things is all I'm kind of trying to highlight here, because I read it every single day. You can't make money flower farming. Not true. You know, there's too many flower farmers. That is not true. There are not too many professional flower farmers. There's so many untruths. So you have to surround yourself with people that are, you know, like-minded with you. And, you know, honestly, I know that a really great example of that is, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, or maybe you're saying this to your kids now, when you start hanging out with the wrong crowd, you know, as a teenager or a kid, all kinds of bad things can start happening to you. You know, you're guilty by association is one thing that can happen, right? I mean, there's just so, you get introduced and exposed to things that you just know that you may not realize it when you, especially when you're a child, that you shouldn't be doing that. But when you're not with that crowd, you just don't even know about those things, that they actually exist. And that guilty by association, I mean, that is really, really a tough one to overcome. And you just start getting involved in things because they're doing it. You know it's not right for you, but let's face it, as adults, we know this better than ever. Peer pressure is really, really big, right? I mean, that's the whole thing that's unfolding in front of us now with social media, right? So when you're running with the wrong crowd, you become a part of it. You just let it sink in and it takes over. Well, the opposite of that happens when you hang out with the right people. You start doing the right stuff, then the right things start happening for you. You know, you get your momentum, and all of a sudden, every single day, you're doing more and more of the right things, and you're still doing some wrong things. I still do wrong things every day. But all of a sudden, you realize, guess what? Your business is up and running, and it's really about the people you surround yourself with. And I'm being totally honest with that, friends. You know, what do I love better than going to a conference? For me now, when I get asked to speak, it's like, oh my gosh, I get to see Dr. Dole and Dave and Ellen and all these people that I look up to and learn so much from every time I see them and eat dinner with them. And that's what it's like when you surround yourself in the right community. So, you know, if you want to start a flower farming business, don't be a part of what I believe wholeheartedly is the largest crowd of people that watch, read, and listen to proven ways to start flower farming businesses, but they never, ever start. And that is really true, because they're so afraid about those what ifs that you're piling up on your shoulders, right, or in your mind. And there's just really no time like the present to embrace the opportunities and moving swiftly. Let's face one scary step together. And friends, it's the scariest thing that I ever faced until I learned to love it. And I tell you, it's my favorite part of my work now. And it's the heart of business. And it's asking people to to exchange their money for the flowers that I've grown. It's selling the blooming flowers, y'all, right? Is selling the flowers not the whole point of going into business? You know, you can grow all the gorgeous flowers you want for the fun of it, you know, if that's what you want to do. But if you want to go into business, we have to sell them. And I don't even know about you, but I will say, after teaching people now for over 25 years to learn how to flower farm, I will say that everybody says, can't I just grow the flowers? I'm telling you, I actually said those actual words to one of my entrepreneurial cousins, and he said, you are no different than anybody else. But friends, I'm telling you, it does not need to be that way. It's not at all what you think it's about, you know? If you'd like for me to help you face the fear of selling flowers, we can do it, because I happen to have right now, if you're listening to this podcast the week that the episode came out, I'm doing 2 free live masterclasses. Where to sell cut flowers, finding the best markets for your flower farm. And I will tell you that I crush a lot of the myths that we think selling the flowers that we're growing is about. And so the episode came out the week of October 21st of 2025. That's just for reference for folks. And, you know, I hope you'll join me for the free masterclass and take the first big step in starting your business of, you know, when you hear and learn the facts, things are not nearly so scary. And you may have heard me say this before, you know, I stand over here on the shore shivering at the ocean, scared to death to get in that I'm going to drown, right? But in fact, when I finally get up the courage to stick my toe in, guess what? That ocean that I thought was going to swallow me is only like an inch deep and a mile wide. It's nothing to drown in. It's not nearly as bad as I thought. And selling is no different. And that's what I hope to communicate to you in this free live masterclass, because I just think there's so many myths. The myths fuel the fire of the scariness of selling. And so, my friends, my mission is to encourage, empower, you know, those of us that want to pursue a flower farming business. And I really want to help you normal people, you know who you are, the non-dyslexics that don't have this gift of dyslexia like I do, to embrace these essential steps of starting, being that cliff jumper. It can lead you to such long-term success as a flower farming entrepreneur. See, I can't even pronounce words sometimes right, y'all. If you ever heard me skip words, insert words, use the wrong word, like the opposite meaning, that's all dyslexia at work, y'all. You just have to take me with the whole ball of wax. And I hope to see you in the free masterclass. And so the sign up will be below this in the show notes. And I'll be screaming about it all week to get people in there. And remember, my friends, surround yourself with the right people and the right tools, and know it's going to be fearful, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And remember, it's just another problem to solve. That's all it's about. So friends, I hope this is helping you face your fears of starting the business and selling, which is the biggest stumbling block to most people. And so let's tackle that head first. So friends, remember, if you are enjoying my podcast, to please subscribe, drop a review. It only has to be 5 words or more for them to count it as a review. That helps the podcast platforms to show my podcast to more people. So if you appreciate me doing this for you, do that for me, please. It won't take but 1 second to get there and 10 seconds to hit the stars and to write, I love this podcast, or whatever you want to write. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And until we meet again, my friends, ciao.